Today we're going to work on drawing a sphere, a three-dimensional circle or sphere through Procreate. I'm going to start out creating a new canvas, and I'm going to choose the paper 8.5 by 11 size. So just tap that, and that opens up my new canvas. I'm going to double check that my color is that I'm using black, and to double check that I'm just going to double tap at the bottom of my circle, and that automatically selects the black for me. And then for my brush, I'm going to go over into my brush panel, and I'm going to choose, let's see, the sketching brush group and the 6B pencil. Okay, so I'm going to tap out of that. I'm going to turn up my opacity here to, let's make it about 65%. Let's see what my brush size looks like. I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller, maybe about 50%. And then I'm just going to draw a circle. Okay, keeping my pencil down, it snaps into an ellipse, and then when I put my finger down on the screen, it creates a circle. Okay. If you accidentally lift your pencil up too soon, you can always go if you lift your pencil up before you can get it into a perfect circle, you can go into this edit shape here and tap on circle. Okay, so tap out of that. Now I'm going to go over and I'm going to add a layer above that circle and tap out of my layers, and I'm going to take my 6B pencil. My light source is coming from this direction, okay? So that means this side of my sphere will be in light and this side of my sphere will be in shadow. So I'm just going to go ahead, I want that a little bit deeper of a curve. I'm going to go ahead and draw this shape in here, and see I held my pencil down at the end of that again, and it created this arc for me. Very helpful. Okay, so that's the beginning of my shadow side. Now I'm going to go all the way back on the end of my pencil, and I'm going to hold it so that I'm using the side of the point rather than the tip. And I'm going to start just filling in using some light pressure. I'm going to start filling in this shadow side. You don't want to use too much pressure when you're doing this. You don't want to go in like this and get it too dark. You want to, like same way as if you were drawing in charcoal, you want to build up your layers kind of lightly and slowly. And it just makes it a little easier to get that realistic texture that you would get from charcoal. Just go back over it and add in some more. Do like another layer. Darken it up a little bit. Okay, so I have a nice layer of charcoal essentially down on my sphere. So now I'm going to take my smudge tool up here. Tap on that. And let's see, I'm going to use this under the charcoals. I'm going to use this vine charcoal texture to blend with, to smudge with, okay? And I have it set to about 20% size-wise and 75% opacity. There we go. And just kind of, I think I want it a little bit more opaque. It's having too much of an effect there for me, or a little less opaque, I should say. So I've got it down to about 35. I use that to blend, and yeah, that's giving me a more subtle effect. I like that a little better. So just gonna smudge that. Get it a little smoother on here. I'm going to smudge some of this up over my line. There's not a lot coming up, so we'll fix that in a minute. Okay. So now I'm not going to add a new layer. I want there to be a gradation between my shadow side and my shadow side and my light side. So I'm not going to add a new layer right now. I'm going to keep working on layer 2 because I want to be able to smudge these together. But I'm going to go back to my pencil. I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm going to go back to my paintbrush, sorry, and I'm going to lower the opacity down to like 30%. And again, light pressure all the way back on the end of my pencil using the side of the pencil, not the tip. And I'm just going to add some light layers here. I think I may want a little bit more opacity. I'm going to go up to 45%. Yeah, that's better. I just need to get some charcoal down so we can blend it out to make that smooth gradation from the light side over to the shadow side. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that all the way up over the top of the sphere. Got a little harsh there. Okay, then I'm going to take my smudge tool again. I'm not going to change anything about that. I'm just going to use the same one I've been using. And staying back on the end of my pencil, I'm going to start smudging all of the new charcoal that I put down. And get this transition nice and even and smooth. And just keep working on it until it's looking very, very smooth and even. You want to make sure you don't have like a weird shape like this. That needs to be a rounded arc. It's looking a little funky. So I'm going to use my smudge tool. By going this direction, it pushes the light into the darker area and pushes the darker area back. If I were to go this way, it pushes the darker back into the light area. I don't want that. So I'm going to push all of my darks back down towards the shadow side and get my arc looking a little bit more accurate. Okay, I'm going to take my eraser and clean up just a little bit of this out here. But I went too far. How big is my eraser? I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Too far. So I've got some nice mid-range values going on here, but I want to make some of them a little bit darker. So I'm going to add a layer and, oopsie, that's not what I meant to do. Add a layer, go to my brush, still using that 6B pencil and black, and I'm just going to add in a little bit of a darker value along my terminator here, my core shadow. I'm going to bring this up a little bit higher. I'm going to bring that all the way down. And go back into my smudge tool and blend that out some. Then blend it out along this edge. I want to make sure that this edge where it transitions from the light side to the shadow side is nice and soft and gradual. Otherwise it looks like there's a sharp edge on your sphere. The smudge tool is great for this. Okay, I'm going to take my eraser again and clean up my messiness over here. Okay. So now I'm going to need a little bit of reflected light down here from the light coming down, going over my sphere and hitting the surface back here, and then the light bouncing back into the shadow side of my sphere. So to do that, I'm going to take my eraser, and let's see, I have it on the Vine charcoal under charcoals, so that's good. And then I'm going to increase the opacity of that to about 28%, and staying on this layer, I'm going to just start erasing very subtly along this part of the sphere to get this reflected light in here. Okay. And now I'm going to go back into my smudge tool and I'm going to soften up those edges. Okay. And then I'm going to go into my layers panel. I'm going to add a new layer, but I'm going to tap my pencil on it until it kind of pops up, and then I'm going to slide it back down all the way underneath my layer 1. So you should have layer 4, then layer 1, 2, and 3. Okay. What this does is it's going to put anything on this layer underneath everything above it. So I'm going to put my cast shadow on here, and it's going to go underneath the sphere this way. All right, so go back to my pencil or to my paintbrush. I'm going to turn up the opacity on this, and I'm going to start my cast shadow here and here. I'm just going to bring it over that way, and okay, so I'm going to start drawing this in here. Now, because I've used a lot of, my layers haven't been very opaque. If I were to draw this up through here, you can see it. If the layers had been, the other layers above it had been at full opacity, you wouldn't see anything behind it. But the nice thing is if I mess up, oh no, I put a mark right there, oh no, what do I do? Because it's on a new layer, on a different layer, I can take my eraser and let me turn up the opacity on my eraser and just go in and erase that right out, okay? It's a really nice thing about working on different layers. So I'm just gonna get some of this really dark on here, using heavier pressure than I did when I was drawing on this sphere. I think I'm going to turn my brush size up to all the way. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my smudge tool and turn up my opacity, turn up my smudge size to about 30%, I think. I don't like that, that's too big. Go back down to around 8 or 9%. And I'm just going to smudge this out. Okay, I'm going to grab my paintbrush. I'm going to bring this up a little bit more so it attaches a little better on both sides. Okay. So now what I want to do is, oh, and I think I'm going to bring this out a little bit more as well. And smudge. Okay. So now I'm going to take my eraser, I'm going to turn my opacity down. I'm going to turn my size up to about 25% and, oh, that's too much. Don't want it to erase that much. So turn my opacity down to about, I don't know, 19%. Really light pressure. And I'm just going to take just a notch off of, just a tiny bit off of how dark this cast shadow is. So the cast shadow lightens as it gets, it lightens just a very little bit as it gets further away from the object. Okay, now I'm going to take my smudge tool, I'm going to work things around a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go back in with a little bit more of my pencil. and smudge some more. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Okay, I think I want to go back in and darken my core shadow a little bit more. So I went into my layers panel and I selected layer 3 where I have my core shadow. And I'm going to tap my brush and have the same brush selected. And so I'm just going to go in and add a little bit more black to this core shadow. I'm going to maintain my reflected light. Now I'm going in with my smudge tool and just kind of blending out this core shadow a little bit more. So one thing to keep in mind when drawing a sphere is that everything on your shadow side will be darker than anything on your light side, including your reflected light. Your reflected light needs to be darker than anything on your light side. And when you think about it, we use spheres to draw a whole lot of different things. You're drawing a portrait, the head has a sphere in it. Whether it's an animal or a person, their head is going to have a spherical shape, and there are spherical shapes within the head as well. And just anything you can think of, there's probably some sort of basic shape in there that when you simplify it down enough, you're going to end up with a sphere, a cube, a cone, or a cylinder. And so understanding how the light interacts with these objects makes it a whole lot easier for you to draw them to look three-dimensional and realistic, regardless of what medium you're using to do your drawing in. This little light edge here against this line, I'm trying to get rid of that. Let me go into layer 2 and see if I can, the pencil, and get that taken out. There we go, that's better. As I smudge it, it comes back. Weird. Okay, clean up with my eraser a little bit more. Not too much eraser, and I think I'm on the wrong layer. Go back to here. There we go. And back down to my core shadow layer. Nope. Just kind of going through the layers, trying to figure out where the smudges are so I can erase them. Nope, they won't be there. Not too much. Go. I'm going to bring down the size of that eraser. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do, let's see, I'm on layer 2 that has the light side and the shadow side of my sphere. So I want to stay there. I'm going to go in and pick my eraser, and I'm just going to check my brush size. I'm going to make it like a 30. Increase the opacity of my eraser to about, let's say 50%. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put a highlight in on my sphere. to really help it look three-dimensional. And then I'm going to go back into my smudge tool. So I'm just going to keep smudging some of this on the light side in order to have it be nice and even. Just work on that transition a little bit more on the edge. Okay, so that's a pretty good sphere. The only issue is that it's really smooth. It doesn't have any texture to it like you would have with if you had done a traditional drawing. And since how I like the traditional drawing look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and turn off the visibility of each of these layers. I'll tap here on layer 4, and I'm going to hit the plus sign and add in a layer 5, but then I'm going to put my pencil on it, hold it until it pops up a little bit, and then I'm going to move it underneath layer 5, or layer 4, I'm sorry. Okay, so now it goes background color, layer 5, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I'm going to go into my color wheel, and I'm going to move my outer wheel up to like a yellow, and then I'm going to move my inner wheel up to a really desaturated light yellow. So the closer it is over to the left, the less saturation, the less of the color it has. And so I don't want it straight white, but I want it kind of a warm gray. All right, so I have it there. I'm going to tap out of my color wheel, and then I'm going to go to my brush settings, and let's see. I don't like those textures. I think going back into the charcoals. Oh, cancel. I think I'm going to do this to be compressed, okay? And I'm going to increase my brush size to 100%, and I'm going to turn my opacity down to about 60%, and I'm just going to, this will be really subtle, I'm just going to drag my brush without lifting it. I'm going to drag it back and forth across my canvas all the way down. Okay, and it may seem like it's not doing anything, but when you go into your layers panel and you turn off your background color, you can see that you have some marks down on the screen, okay? And it looks like I was a little light at the top, so I'm going to go back over and get those. And just get a nice layer of texture on here. All right, and so that's looking pretty good. Okay, so I've got my layer here with the texture on it, so I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to put my pencil on the layer, the copy of layer 5, and I'm going to bring it up above layer 3 and put it there. And you see now it gave me a little bit more texture underneath or on top of my drawing, but it also lightened all my values. So I'm going to make this a little smaller and scooch it over here. Go back to my layers panel. I'm going to tap on the in here on the first layer 5. And I'm going to go through and see which of these blending modes gives me the effect that I like them, that I like most. So we've got multiply, darken, color burn, linear burn. Linear burn's not too bad. Don't like those. So I think the one that I liked best was, okay, so I think we're going to go with linear burn. And make sure the opacity is turned all the way up. Tap out of your layers. And then we're going to put this over here. So when you zoom in, you can see some of that texture in there, right? There's texture all over. And this is a way of making a textured paper so that it looks like your pencils are interacting with the surface. And that goes a long way to making it look less like digital art and more like traditional art. It's getting that texture in there. Now the biggest problem we have left is this ring around our circle. We don't want that. So I'm going to go into our layers panel and I'm going to go to layer 1 and I'm just going to check the opacity or check the visibility off on that, and then come back and look at our sphere and like do a little bit of cleanup work on this. Let's see, what layer am I on? I'm going to go to layer 2 and just do, oh wait, I'm on the wrong brush probably. To be compressed. I want 6B and sketching. Yep. And I'm going to turn that down. I'm going to take out, redo. Okay. So why is that light? Oh, I'm on white. I have white. That's why it's light. Okay, so go back to black, double tap down at the bottom to get the darkest dark, and I'm just going to clean up some of my edges here. Now that that ring is out, and check my smudge tool. Get my eraser over here. Let's see, I think I need to make my eraser a little smaller. Go, turn up my opacity on it. Just clean up some of these wonky edges. Oops, too much. Too much. You want to pick up your pencil pretty frequently so that if you have to undo some of your work, it doesn't undo like a bunch of stuff that you were happy with. And you know, each time you pick up your pencil, it sets it back to a new step, and so it won't erase past that point or undo past that point unless you click again or tap again, sorry. And go into my layer 3 that has my core shadow on it and just do a little bit more blending here. You could blend forever with this, right? I think I'm going to add a little bit more value over here in the halftones area. It could be just a little darker. Oops. I'm just working back and forth on refining this, same as you would on paper. All right, so there you go. You have a sphere drawn using charcoal brushes and textured paper that you are able to create yourself. Some of this on the light side in order to have it be nice and even. Just work on that transition a little bit more on the edge. Okay, so that's a pretty good sphere. The only issue is that it's really smooth. It doesn't have any texture to it like you would have with if you had done a traditional drawing. And since how I like the traditional drawing look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and turn off the visibility of each of these layers. I'm going to tap on my background color page. Oopsie, that's not what I wanted. Okay, I'll tap here on layer 4, and I'm going to hit the plus sign and add in a layer 5, but then I'm going to put my pencil on it, hold it until it pops up a little bit, and then I'm going to move it underneath layer 5, or layer 4, I'm sorry. Okay, so now it goes background color, layer 5, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I'm going to go in to my color wheel, and I'm going to move my outer wheel up to like a yellow, and then I'm going to move my inner wheel up to a really desaturated light yellow. So the closer it is over to the left, the less saturation, the less of the color it has. And so I don't want it straight white, but I want it kind of a warm gray. All right, so I have it there. I'm going to tap out of my color wheel, and then I'm going to go to my brush settings, and let's see. I don't like those textures. I think going back into the charcoals, oh, cancel. I think I'm going to do this to be compressed, okay? And I'm going to increase my brush size to 100%, and I'm going to turn my opacity down to about 60%, and I'm just going to, this will be really subtle, I'm just going to drag my brush without lifting it. I'm going to drag it back and forth across my canvas all the way down. Okay, and it may seem like it's not doing anything, but when you go into your layers panel and you turn off your background color, you can see that you have some marks down on the screen. Okay, and it looks like I was a little light at the top, so I'm going to go back over and get those. And just get a nice layer of texture on here. All right. And so that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to turn on all my other layers. Okay, so you can see now it's got a lot of texture, right? That looks great, but still here where it's got some of the darker, more opaque colors, it's still, here where it's got some of the darker, more opaque colors, it's still really like too smooth. You want the texture of the paper to show up a little bit better. So go back into your layers panel, and I'm going to tap on one of my layer 5s, and I'm going to bring it all the way up above layer 3. Okay, and so now this is what we get, and that's not really what we want either. We've got texture over the whole thing, but we've lost a lot of the value in our drawing. And so open your layers panel, tap the in, or tap on layer 5 and then tap the in, and that brings up this menu. So we're going to go through and we're going to see which gives us the best effect. And in order to see this better, I'm going to move it over here because this is the area I'm mostly interested in. So, okay, I'm going to go back into that. Oops, tap my letter. All right, so we've got multiply, darken, color burn, linear burn, darker color. Darker color's working pretty nicely. Normal, nope. Light and nope, nope, nope. Overlay's not too bad either. Soft light, hard light. Nope. Definitely not. So I think I liked overlay and darker color the most. Let's go multiply again. Multiply, darker color. I like darker color better than multiply. Overlay and darker color. I think I like overlay best. All right, so I'm going to leave it on the overlay, tap up there, and then tap out of my layers panel. It's a little darker than I really want though. The paper texture is a little darker. So I'm going to go back into that layer, make sure that that's what's selected, and then hit this O here. That's an O now because I have it on overlay. And I'm going to bring my opacity down to, let's see, I'm going to bring it down to about 50%. Okay. Tap my layer icon, and then I'm going to go down to layer 5 and select it, tap the N and lower it to, oh, you know what? I'm actually, the bigger problem here is that I have my background color off. That makes a big difference. Well, let's redo that. Okay, let's delete you. Okay. Okay, so I've got my layer here with the texture on it, so I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to put my pencil on the layer, the copy of layer 5, and I'm going to bring it up above layer 3 and put it there. And you see now it gave me a little bit more texture underneath or on top of my drawing, but it also lightened all my values. So I'm gonna make this a little smaller and scooch it over here. Go back to my layers panel. I'm gonna tap on the in here on the first layer 5. And I'm gonna go through and see which of these blending modes gives me the effect that I like that I like most. So we've got multiply, darken, color burn, linear burn. Linear burn's not too bad. Don't like those. So I think the one that I liked best was, what was it, linear burn? Even that's not super great. Multiply, darken, color burn. Okay, so I think we're going to go with linear burn. And make sure the opacity is turned all the way up. Tap out of your layers. And then we're going to put this over here. So when you zoom in, you can see some of that texture in there, right? There's texture all over. And this is a way of making a textured paper so that it looks like your pencils are interacting with the surface. And that goes a long way to making it look less like digital art and more like traditional art. It's getting that texture in there. Now the biggest problem we have left is this ring around our circle. We don't want that. So I'm going to go into our layers panel and I'm going to go to layer 1 and I'm just going to check the opacity or check the visibility off on that, and then come back and look at our sphere and like do a little bit of cleanup work on this. Let's see, what layer am I on? I'm going to go to layer 2 and just do, oh wait, I'm on the wrong brush probably. To be compressed. I want 6B and sketching. Yep. And I'm going to turn that down. I'm going to take out, redo. Okay. So why is that light? Oh, I'm on white. I have white. That's why it's light. Okay, so go back to black, double tap down at the bottom to get the darkest dark. And I'm just going to clean up some of my edges here. Now that that ring is out. And check my smudge tool. Get my eraser over here. Let's see, I think I need to make my eraser a little smaller. Go, turn up my opacity on it. Just clean up some of these wonky edges. Oops, too much. Too much. You want to pick up your pencil pretty frequently so that if you have to undo some of your work, it doesn't undo like a bunch of stuff that you were happy with. And you know, each time you pick up your pencil, it sets it back to a new step, and so it won't erase past that point or undo past that point unless you click again or tap again, sorry. And go into my layer 3 that has my core shadow on it and just do a little bit more blending here. You could blend forever with this, right? I think I'm going to add a little bit more value over here in the halftones area. It could be just a little darker. Oops. I'm just working back and forth on refining this, same as you would on paper. Unfortunately, the last bit of the video got cut off, and so I've just uploaded the video that Procreate records of the drawing here, so you can see how it finishes at the very end.